Have you noticed something strange about gardening advice this time of year? By the middle of July, most gardening channels, magazines, and garden centers act like the planting season is over. The spring rush is gone. The seed racks are ignored. And many gardeners assume they have missed their chance. But what if I told you that some of the fastest, most beautiful flowers actually perform better when planted right now than they do in spring? It sounds backwards. After all, July is hot. The sun is intense. The soil dries faster. And common sense tells us that flowers should have been planted months ago. But that is exactly where most gardeners get it wrong. Because while gardeners are slowing down, the soil is doing the exact opposite. For weeks, that soil has been soaking up heat. Instead of sitting cold and sluggish like it does in spring, it is now warm, active, and ready to wake seeds up almost immediately. Many flowers that struggle through cool spring conditions suddenly germinate in just a few days when planted in July. And that creates a secret opportunity. A July sowing can give you up to 12 weeks of color, flowers for pollinators, armloads of cut flowers for the house, and in some cases, even prepare your garden for next year. In fact, a few of the flowers we'll discuss today actually bloom better when they are planted into lean summer soil rather than rich spring beds. Others help reduce pests. Some attract beneficial insects. And a few can reseed themselves so aggressively that a single packet of seed can turn into years of free flowers. Today we're going through 11 fast-growing flowers that you can still sow right now for an incredible display later this season. And before we get started, there are 3 simple rules that will dramatically improve your success with every flower on this list. First, resist the urge to over-fertilize. Most of these flowers actually perform best in average or even poor soil. Rich soil often creates beautiful leaves, but disappointingly few blooms. Second, keep the top inch of soil consistently moist during germination. This is the critical stage. Once seedlings become established, many of these flowers become surprisingly drought-tolerant. And third, do not bury seeds too deeply. One of the biggest mistakes gardeners make is planting seeds far deeper than necessary. Most flowers on today's list only need light soil coverage or simple contact with the soil surface. Get those 3 principles right, and your success rate will increase dramatically. But before we dive into the first flower, I have a major announcement. The gardening guide you've been writing to me about for months is finally here. The Plant Once Garden is officially out. You have been incredibly patient with me while I took the time to get this right. It is approximately 150 pages of everything this channel teaches, gathered into one complete reference, designed with a hand-drawn heritage cover and warm cream pages that feel like a guide your grandmother would have owned. Inside, you'll find the 90 perennial plants that come back every year with almost no labor, 6 complete garden plans, the no-labor planting calendar, and the hydrogen peroxide method explained completely. I've also included the specific perennials that bring hummingbirds singing and dancing right outside your window, the chapter on what your garden becomes over 20 years, and the mistakes that kill perennials. This is a reference you can lean on for the rest of your gardening life. You can scan the QR code on your screen right now or click the link in the pinned comment or description below to get your copy. Thank you again for your patience. Now, back to the garden. Number 1. Zinnias. If your goal is instant gratification, start with zinnias. There is a reason experienced gardeners return to them year after year. Few flowers deliver more color, more blooms, and more value for less effort. And July is one of the best times to sow them. Most gardeners think spring planting gives flowers a head start. But with zinnias, warm summer soil changes everything. Instead of waiting around in cool spring conditions, the seeds recognize the heat as a signal that growing conditions are perfect. Many gardeners see germination in as little as 4 to 5 days. That is incredibly fast. By the time August arrives, you'll already have sturdy young plants developing rapidly. And before long, you'll have blooms covering the garden. What makes zinnias especially useful is their versatility. You can use them in borders. You can fill empty spaces in flower beds, You can grow them specifically for pollinators. Or you can create a cutting garden that supplies bouquets for weeks. For compact plants, the Profusion series is difficult to beat. Profusion Fire, Orange, and White stay neat and manageable while producing an astonishing number of flowers. If you prefer larger blooms for cutting, the Benares Giant series is a favorite among flower growers. The Coral, Wine, and Scarlet varieties produce massive flowers on strong stems. Now here's something most gardeners never realize. The biggest mistake people make with zinnias is trying to help them too much. They dump compost into the planting hole. They add fertilizer. They enrich the soil. And then they wonder why their plants become tall, floppy, and vulnerable to disease. Zinnias are not asking for luxury. In fact, overly rich soil often encourages weak growth and increases the likelihood of powdery mildew. Moderately fertile soil is usually more than enough. Give them sunlight, give them space, and let them do what they naturally do best. For gardeners in zones 5 through 10, they are one of the fastest ways to create a spectacular late-season display. Number 2. Cosmos. If zinnias reward attention, cosmos reward neglect. In fact, some gardeners accidentally kill their chances of beautiful cosmos flowers by caring for them too much. That sounds ridiculous, but it is absolutely true. Cosmos are one of nature's great opportunists. They evolve to thrive in difficult conditions. Poor soil, dry soil, lean soil. The very places where many flowers struggle are exactly where cosmos shine. This creates one of the most fascinating biological tricks in gardening. When cosmos grow in rich, fertile soil, they become comfortable. And comfortable plants focus on growing leaves. Lots of leaves. Sometimes enormous amounts of foliage. But when cosmos detect that resources are limited, they switch priorities. Instead of investing energy into endless leaf production, they focus on reproduction. And reproduction means flowers. Lots of flowers. That is why gardeners often find that their best cosmos displays come from the least impressive sections of the garden. The flowers seem to explode from conditions that should not work. For tall, airy displays, the sensation mix remains a classic choice. The plants can easily reach 3 to 4 feet tall and sway beautifully in summer breezes. If you prefer a smaller plant, the Sonata series stays compact while delivering the same cheerful blooms. And if you want a color that truly stands out, Rubenza offers rich ruby red flowers that seem to glow in late afternoon sunlight. Now here is the important warning. Avoid nitrogen-heavy fertilizers. Nitrogen encourages leaf growth. And with cosmos, too much nitrogen can dramatically reduce flowering. If you have ever grown giant cosmos plants with surprisingly few flowers, excessive fertility was likely the culprit. The good news is that once established, cosmos require very little attention. They tolerate heat, they tolerate dry conditions, and they continue producing blooms well into fall. For gardeners in zones 3 through 10, they are one of the easiest flowers on today's list. Number 3. Sunflowers. Few flowers capture attention quite like sunflowers. Even people who claim they are not interested in gardening stop and admire a sunflower. There is something universally appealing about them. The massive blooms, the towering stems, the bright colors, and the incredible wildlife activity they attract. Most gardeners associate sunflowers with spring planting, but fast-maturing varieties planted in July can produce remarkable results. In fact, many gardeners discover that July-sown sunflowers skip much of the sluggish early growth phase often seen during cool spring weather. The warm soil accelerates establishment. The long summer days fuel rapid growth. And before you know it, the plants are racing toward bloom. One excellent choice is Autumn Beauty. This variety produces branching stems and a beautiful mix of warm colors: golds, bronzes, reds, and oranges. The result looks almost like autumn itself has taken root in the garden. The Pro Cut series is another excellent option, especially if you enjoy bringing flowers indoors. And Sunrich Lemon or Sunrich Orange remain reliable favorites for gardeners wanting uniform blooms. Now here is the challenge. You are not the only one interested in sunflower seeds. Birds know exactly where they are. So do squirrels. Freshly planted sunflower seeds can disappear almost overnight. That is why protecting newly planted seeds during the first 10 days is often worth the effort. A lightweight row cover can dramatically improve germination success. Plant the seeds approximately 1 inch deep and keep the soil moist until emergence. Once established, sunflowers become surprisingly resilient, and the rewards extend beyond flowers. Pollinators visit them constantly. Birds enjoy the mature seed heads, and the plants create a dramatic vertical element that instantly makes a garden feel more alive. For gardeners in zones 2 through 11, they remain one of the most rewarding flowers you can grow. Number 4. French marigolds. Now let's talk about a flower that does much more than simply look beautiful. French marigolds might be one of the hardest working plants you can add to your garden. Most people plant them because they bloom quickly, and that alone makes them worthy of a spot on this list. Many varieties begin flowering in as little as 50 to 55 days. That is incredibly fast, especially for gardeners trying to maximize every remaining week of the growing season. The Bonanza series remains one of the most popular choices. Hero varieties offer excellent heat tolerance, and the Aurora series stays compact while producing vibrant blooms. But the real story happens underground. Most gardeners think marigolds help with pests because of their scent. While that may play a small role, something much more interesting is happening beneath the soil surface. French marigold roots produce a compound called alpha-terthienol. This naturally occurring substance acts as a biological defense against harmful root knot nematodes. These microscopic pests attack plant roots and can cause significant damage throughout the garden. By growing French marigolds, you are effectively improving the biological health of the soil while also enjoying months of flowers. In other words, they are helping next year's garden while beautifying this year's. That is an incredible return from a simple packet of seed. And because they tolerate heat so well, July sowing often produces strong, vigorous plants. Keep the soil evenly moist during germination. Provide full sun. Avoid excessive fertilizer, and let them get established. Once they begin blooming, you'll understand why generations of gardeners have relied on them. And the next flower on our list may be one of the most underrated edible flowers you can grow. Number 5. Nasturtiums. If you have a difficult area in your garden that seems determined to disappoint you every year, nasturtiums may be the answer. Most gardeners spend their time searching for flowers that can tolerate rich soil. Nasturtiums do the exact opposite. They actively prefer conditions that many other flowers dislike: poor soil, dry soil, neglected corners, areas where fertilizer has never been applied. That is where they often perform their best, and there is a fascinating biological reason behind it. When nasturtiums find themselves growing in nutrient-rich conditions, they focus heavily on foliage production. The leaves become lush and abundant. The plants look healthy, but flowering can be reduced. However, when they encounter leaner conditions, something remarkable happens. The plant interprets that scarcity as a signal that survival is not guaranteed. And like many plants under mild stress, it shifts resources toward reproduction. That means flowers. Lots of flowers. This is one of those rare situations where doing less often produces better results. For compact displays, Jewel Mix remains one of the most popular choices. The bright reds, oranges, and yellows create instant color. If you enjoy ornamental foliage, the Alaska series combines flowers with beautiful variegated leaves. And for gardeners who want vines spilling from containers or climbing supports, Tall Climbing Mix and Spitfire are excellent options. But there is another reason nasturtiums deserve attention. They are completely edible. The flowers have a peppery flavor. The leaves taste somewhat like mild watercress. And even the seed pods can be pickled and used similarly to capers. Very few flowers offer that combination of beauty and usefulness. Now, if you're gardening in hotter regions, especially zones 7 through 10, Providing afternoon shade can improve performance during periods of extreme heat. But overall, nasturtiums are among the easiest flowers on today's list. Sometimes the best gardening strategy is simply getting out of the plant's way. Number 6. Calendula. Now let's move to a flower that many gardeners underestimate until they grow it themselves. Calendula is one of those plants that quietly earns its place in the garden year after year. At first glance, it looks like a cheerful flowering annual. And it certainly is. But behind those bright blooms is a plant performing several jobs at once. What makes calendula particularly interesting for July sowing is the contrast between its germination preferences and its flowering preferences. The seeds love warm soil. Warm July conditions often trigger germination within 5 to 10 days. Yet the mature plants prefer cooler weather. That combination creates a perfect opportunity. The seeds establish rapidly during summer. Then, as temperatures begin moderating later in the season, the plants shift into heavy flowering. It is almost like setting a trap for autumn beauty. For gardeners interested in medicinal applications, Resina remains a popular choice. Pacific Beauty Mix produces large, impressive flowers, and varieties such as Indian Prince and Pink Surprise add unique color variations that stand out beautifully in fall gardens. But what many gardeners never realize is that calendula can also function as a living trap crop. The stems and foliage produce a sticky resin. That resin physically traps small, soft-bodied insects such as aphids and whiteflies. Instead of concentrating pest pressure on your vegetables, calendula often helps draw those pests away. Think about that for a moment. You are adding flowers. You are attracting pollinators. You are extending seasonal color. And at the same time, the plant is helping manage pest populations naturally. That is a tremendous amount of value from a single packet of seed. For gardeners in zones 3 through 9, July sowing can be extremely productive. If you're gardening in zone 10, waiting until late August or early September often delivers better results. And if you've never grown calendula before, don't be surprised if it quickly becomes one of your annual favorites. Number 7. Sweet alyssum. Sometimes the smallest flowers deliver the biggest impact. Sweet alyssum is proof of that. At first glance, it doesn't look particularly impressive. The flowers are tiny. The plants stay relatively low. And compared to giant sunflowers or towering cosmos, it can seem almost insignificant. But that first impression is incredibly misleading, because sweet alyssum is one of the most valuable support plants you can grow. July sowing gives sweet alyssum an opportunity to establish itself while summer heat is still present. The roots develop, the plants spread, and then as cooler autumn temperatures arrive, they often explode into bloom. The result is a carpet of flowers that can completely transform the appearance of a bed or border. The fragrance alone makes it worthwhile. Many gardeners describe it as a rich honey scent that drifts through the garden on cool evenings. Carpet of Snow remains a classic white variety. Royal Carpet offers rich violet coloring, and heat-tolerant selections like Easter Bonnet and Wonderland Rose perform particularly well when summer temperatures remain high. Now here is the part most gardeners overlook. Sweet alyssum functions almost like an insect recruitment center. Its flowers produce abundant nectar that attracts beneficial insects, hoverflies, parasitic wasps, and other natural predators. These insects help control aphids, caterpillars, and many other common garden pests. In other words, sweet alyssum is not just feeding pollinators. It is helping build an army of beneficial insects that actively work on your behalf. And unlike many flowers, the seeds require light to germinate. Do not bury them. Simply scatter them across the soil surface and gently press them into place. That single detail dramatically improves germination success. Sometimes the smallest seeds teach the biggest gardening lessons. Number 8. Borage. If there is one flower on today's list that deserves far more attention than it receives, it may be borage. Most gardeners have heard of it. Far fewer actually grow it. And that is unfortunate, because borage may be one of the most useful flowers in the entire garden. The first thing people notice is the color. True blue flowers are surprisingly uncommon in nature. Borage produces beautiful star-shaped blooms in a vivid blue that immediately catches the eye. But the flowers are only part of the story. Borage is a Mediterranean native. That means it evolved to handle difficult conditions. Hot weather, dry weather, periods of limited moisture. By sowing in July, the plants develop deep root systems that help them remain resilient even when summer becomes challenging. But the real magic happens above the flowers. Most flowering plants replenish nectar gradually. Borage does something extraordinary. The nectar in each flower is replenished approximately every 2 minutes. Think about what that means. For pollinators searching for food, borage becomes an incredibly reliable destination. The flowers continuously provide resources long after many other plants have stopped producing. That is one reason bees seem almost obsessed with it. Plant a patch of borage and you'll often see constant activity from morning until evening. For gardeners trying to support pollinators through late summer and fall, few flowers work harder. The standard Borage officinalis remains the most common variety. Alba offers elegant white flowers, and Bill Archer is known for particularly rich coloration. There is also a culinary benefit. The flowers possess a mild cucumber-like flavor and are often used in salads, drinks, and garnishes. So once again, we have a flower doing multiple jobs. It provides beauty, it supports pollinators, it tolerates drought, and it contributes to the kitchen. Not bad for a plant that many gardeners overlook. By the way, if you're looking to completely transform your yard into a low-maintenance paradise, don't forget that my full reference guide, The Plant Once Garden, is now officially available. It's 150 pages, covering all the perennial foundations and permanent setups we talk about on this channel. You can scan the QR code right here on the screen, or find the link in the pinned comment below to grab your copy. Now, let's get right back into today's topic, because the next flower on our list may be one of the smartest long-term investments you can make from a single packet of seed. Number 9. California Poppies. If you enjoy flowers that practically take care of themselves, California Poppies belong near the top of your list. These flowers have a way of making gardeners look far more talented than they actually are. You scatter a few seeds. You provide very little assistance. And before long, the garden is glowing with waves of color. What makes them especially effective for July sowing is the timing. Warm soil encourages rapid establishment. Then, as late summer slowly transitions toward cooler temperatures, conditions naturally begin aligning with the plant's flowering preferences. It is one of those situations where nature does much of the work for you. The Thai Silk series offers beautifully textured blooms. Mission Bells Mix provides a wonderful range of colors. Ivory Castle delivers elegant white flowers, and Purple Gleam introduces stunning lavender tones that many gardeners instantly fall in love with. But there is an important rule you absolutely must follow. Never transplant California poppies. This is where many gardeners accidentally sabotage their success. The moment a California poppy germinates, it begins developing a sensitive taproot. That taproot becomes the foundation of the plant's future growth. Disturbing it often causes setbacks or outright failure. That is why direct sowing is so important. Scatter the seeds where you want them to grow. Press them gently onto the soil surface, and leave them there. Do not bury them deeply. Now here is the long-term benefit that makes California poppies especially attractive. A single mature plant can produce dozens of seed pods, and each pod contains numerous seeds. Allow a few plants to complete their life cycle and drop seed naturally, and you may find yourself with an expanding display year after year. In many gardens, one successful season turns into years of flowers without purchasing additional seed. That is one of the best returns on investment in gardening. A small packet of seed today can become an entire flower bed tomorrow. For gardeners in zones 3 through 10, they remain one of the easiest and most economical flowers you can grow. And in warmer climates, they may even continue blooming through winter. Number 10. Bachelor's button. Now let's talk about a flower that provides something surprisingly rare in the gardening world. True blue flowers. Anyone who has spent time designing flower beds eventually discovers that genuinely blue flowers are harder to find than expected. That is one reason Bachelor's button has remained popular for generations. The color stands out immediately. It complements almost everything, and it brings a cool, calming contrast to warm summer and autumn palettes. July sowing works exceptionally well because Bachelor's button tolerates cool temperatures better than many annual flowers. As summer begins fading, these plants continue moving forward. While some flowers slow down, Bachelor's button often keeps performing. Blue Boy remains the classic choice. Its tall stems make it ideal for cutting gardens. Midget Blue offers a compact option for borders and containers. And Black Ball introduces dramatic deep maroon flowers that create a completely different look. One of the greatest advantages of Bachelor's button is its usefulness as a cut flower. The blooms hold up beautifully in arrangements. And because the color is so unique, even a few stems can completely change the appearance of a bouquet. But success with this flower depends on one simple habit: deadheading. As soon as flowers begin fading, remove them. Many gardeners skip this step. The plant then assumes its job is complete. It begins producing seed. Flower production slows. The show gradually ends. However, when you continuously remove spent blooms, the plant receives a completely different message. It believes reproduction is unfinished. So it keeps producing more flowers, and more flowers, and more flowers. A few minutes of deadheading can extend the display dramatically. That is one of the simplest gardening tricks you'll ever use. Yet it remains one of the most effective. For gardeners in zones 3 through 9, Bachelor's button is a reliable performer that continues earning its place in flower gardens year after year. Number 11. Larkspur. Our final flower may also be the most misunderstood. Because unlike many flowers on today's list, Larkspur isn't racing to take advantage of July heat. Instead, it is taking advantage of what comes after. This is where understanding nature's timing becomes incredibly valuable. Many gardeners struggle with Larkspur because they try forcing it into a spring schedule. They refrigerate seeds. They attempt artificial stratification. They work hard trying to recreate natural conditions. But a late July sowing allows nature to handle much of the process automatically. The seeds rest in the soil. Summer gradually fades. Temperatures slowly cool. Moisture patterns begin changing. And eventually the environmental signals that break dormancy arrive naturally. It is an elegant system that has worked for thousands of years. The giant Imperial series produces spectacular flower spikes, reaching 3 to 4 feet tall. The QIS series is beloved by cut flower growers for its strong, straight stems. And Cloudy Skies Mixture offers some of the most beautiful blue, lavender, and gray tones you'll find in a garden. Like California Poppies, Larkspur develops a sensitive taproot very early in life. This makes direct sowing essential. Do not transplant them. Do not disturb them. Simply sow the seeds where they will ultimately grow. A light covering of soil is more than enough. In many cases, sowing directly on the soil surface works perfectly well. What makes Larkspur especially exciting is the payoff. Those modest little seedlings eventually develop into towering flower spikes that create a level of drama few annuals can match. And because they establish themselves before winter, many gardeners are rewarded with incredible spring and early summer displays the following year. In other words, you're not just planting for this season, you're planting for the future. And that is exactly the kind of thinking that creates truly beautiful gardens. Now before we finish, there is one final lesson hidden inside today's entire list. Notice how many of these flowers succeed because of conditions that most gardeners spend years trying to avoid. Poor soil, limited fertility, natural cooling cycles, direct sowing instead of transplanting. In many cases, success comes not from doing more. It comes from interfering less. That is one of the biggest mindset shifts a gardener can make. The garden does not always need more fertilizer, more products, more amendments, more complicated systems. Sometimes the smartest move is simply understanding what the plant already wants and giving it exactly that. And if you're planning to sow flowers this month, I strongly recommend choosing 3 varieties based on your primary goal. If you want immediate color and visual impact, start with zinnias, French marigolds, and sunflowers. Those 3 alone can completely transform a late summer garden. If your goal is supporting pollinators, consider borage, calendula, and sweet alyssum. Together they create a steady source of nectar while attracting beneficial insects that help keep the garden balanced naturally. And if low-maintenance beauty is your priority, nasturtiums, California poppies, and cosmos are difficult to beat. They thrive with surprisingly little effort and often perform best when gardeners resist the temptation to fuss over them. Whatever combination you choose, remember the secret that most gardeners overlook. July is not the end of planting season. In many ways, it is the beginning of one of the most rewarding planting windows of the entire year. The soil is warm. The growing conditions are favorable, and many flowers are ready to germinate faster now than they would have in spring. So don't put the seed packets away yet. There is still plenty of growing season left. And a few minutes spent sowing seeds today could reward you with months of color, pollinators, bouquets, and beauty all the way into autumn. If you're ready to stop wasting time on plants that die every winter and finally build a garden that takes care of itself, don't forget to grab your copy of The Plant Once Garden. It's 150 pages of everything this channel teaches, completely mapped out for you. Just scan the QR code on your screen right now, or click the link in the description below to get started. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.